Good afternoon, everybody. Steve with Real Progressives. Welcome. For those of you who are just joining me, thank you so much for tuning in. For those of you who have followed me, some of this story will sound familiar. But for those of you who this story is not familiar, stick with me. Let me guide you through this process, okay? It's kind of important. So I've titled this talk, Stop, It's a Trap. And the reason I do that is because I'm watching. And, every time I'm hoping that the light bulbs click on and the lights behind the eyes fire up and the sparks start going between the ears with folks, I see them resort back to the same things that have been said about debt, deficits, and fear that has been riddling us, God, freaking forever, since the 90s for sure, when the New Democrats really took over. I mean, it was going on since the 60s, this neoliberal mindset. But since the 90s, this concept of reducing the deficit, that term has just hit us over and over and over again. We got to reduce the deficit. We got to reduce the deficit. Let me explain something to you before we get too far down the road. The deficit is merely the difference between the amount taxed and the amount spent in a given fiscal year. It doesn't have an ongoing deficit. There's no ongoing deficit problem. The deficit doesn't pile up. It resets to zero every single year. So when you say we've got to reduce the deficit, what you're saying is we need to take more money from the private sector and delete it to make up for our spending. Why is that? Because the mindset is that a government that creates its own currency somehow or another needs us little people's money to survive. Think about the absurdity of that. A government that literally wrote the dollar into existence via a law, via a patent. A government that literally owns every bit of a dollar. The dollar is the government's unit of account. That same government is saying that it can't function unless we take more of its unit of account, these fictitious numbers, from you and I, that we need to pay our electric, that we need to pay our car payments, that we need for food, that we need for health care, that we need for college, that we need for taking care of our children, etc. That same money that they're saying that they need to take more of to reduce the deficit. But alas, then they say, no, we've got to go after the rich. We'll go after the rich to reduce the deficit. We'll take more from the rich to reduce the deficit. Once again, with the mindset that somehow or another, these units of account, these fictitious numbers, this stuff that our government keystrokes into existence, that the rich somehow or another, by paying more, will help the poor lift all boats, right? All of a sudden, these dollars will be reused somehow or another. This is the mindset. So you've heard me say repeatedly, federal taxes do not fund spending, okay? Federal taxes do not pay for spending. Federal taxes do not pay for bombs in Libya or Iran, or they don't pay for Israel. They don't pay for abortions. They don't pay for Obama phones. Taxes don't pay for Medicare, Medicaid. Taxes don't pay for wars. Taxes don't even pay for Social Security. Taxes don't pay for shit. That's the deal. That's the real deal. That's how a sovereign, free-floating fiat currency works. The government has to spend the money into existence so that you and I can have money that we pay a little bit back in taxes to keep the value of that dollar. But if the government taxed back every dollar that it spent into existence, we would have no money in the economy. Think about this. So we have to always deficit spend. So when we say we got to reduce the deficit, what is it that these people are actually saying, folks? Think about it. It's a trap, right? This is a trap. This is playing on your and my gullible nature that we believe that these taxes are going to be used for something. But what happens is when the government issues the dollar, $1, we're just going to say $1 for now to make this story work. The government spends $1 on a government contractor. Government contractor has $1. The government contractor then buys a Reese's peanut butter cup with his $1. That $1 then is received back 50 cents of it as a tax. That dollar goes back to the government. It's deleted because it's satisfied its role. 50 cents is left in the economy. Oh, the next guy wants to buy a pack of gum with his 50 cents. They go ahead and they take a 25 cents out of the 50 for taxes. 25 goes back to the government. It's deleted. Now we got 25 cents left in the economy. Well, the next guy wants to make a phone call. He puts it in the phone. You pay phone, right? And they don't exist anymore, but let's just say a pay phone, right? Drop a quarter in the phone, go to make a phone call. Whoever it is, Verizon, AT&T, whoever, goes ahead, has to pay taxes, and all of a sudden we're now down to 15 cents in the economy. Do you see how this works? We've got a deficit spend in order to have money in the economy. Or we're left with credit money running around the economy, right? Well, the government's not spending enough money, so now you and I have to borrow money in order to have money. So banks create deposits. It's not like they're counterfeiting money or any other crazy nonsense that people say. They create deposits. Now all of a sudden that money, though, has to be paid back, and it zeroes out. That's how that works. So we're stuck. We have two choices, really. Three, if you want to get creative with foreign sector, and I'll bring that up in a minute. We can either A, spend for the public purpose through our federal government. B, we can go into private debt with credit cards and other things to enhance our payments. Or C, the United States can suddenly be a net exporter, and we bring in money from other countries and we convert it to dollars, and that's how we do it. That right there represents what we call sectoral balances: public sector, private sector, and foreign sector, including leakages. All right. Too much information right there, probably. So let's just go back for a minute and talk about it's a trap and talk about reducing the deficit still. You've heard fair-haired Saint Bernie Sanders talk about needing to reduce the deficit. You've heard Howard Dean talk about needing to reduce the deficit. You've heard Cenk Unger talking about how we got to reduce the deficit. You've heard Nancy Pelosi say it. You've heard friggin' Debbie What's-Her-Name Schultz say it. You've heard Queen Hillary say it. You saw Brother Bill say it. Every Republican under the sun has always said it. And this is why we never have nice things. Before Milton Friedman came into the world, before the Chicago School and the Volcker Rule and all these other things came to be, the United States used to dream big. The United States used to have these dreams of putting a man on the moon. The United States used to have these wonderful dreams about Social Security. They had dreams of schools. They had dreams of higher education. They had dreams of a massive military that came to reality. They had dreams of beautiful parks, of incredible monuments, incredible opportunities for us to build a society. They had those dreams back in the day. They were there. Mom and Pop made enough money that they could buy a car. Mom and Pop made enough money that Mom could stay home and cook dinner. Mom and Pop made enough money so that the kids could play baseball, and Dad got off early enough that he could go coach the team. Now, it wasn't always good for everybody because there's institutional racism and there's all these other issues at play that we've got to consider as well. But just remember for a moment, forget those issues just for a second, and let's just think about it's a trap. We got to reduce the deficit. This was a belief that came at a perfect time. Okay? This is the way we have been structured since I've been born. I was born in 1969. As long as I've been alive, I've lived in a neoliberal world, and so have you. Neoliberalism is the idea that our government, if it makes any plans, if it prints any money, as they say, if it spends on the public purpose, we're all going to die from inflation, right? You've heard this before, right? We're all going to die from horrible inflation. We're all going to die because suddenly we will be like Weimar Republic. Suddenly we'll be like Zimbabwe. You've all heard it. Every one of these people has been hoodwinked. And this is what we have been saying. Ellis Winningham and I spoke about this over and over and over again. You can look at our archives. We've talked about neoliberalism repeatedly. And we've explained to you how the Chicago School and Uncle Milty turned our economy into the Wall Street economy. Turned it into the, hey, you and I have to go into private debt to keep the economy afloat while we reduce the deficit. We reduce the deficit. We reduce the deficit. And all that money goes to the top, what is spent. And there's your trickle down. But it doesn't work, does it? You and I, we end up suffering. Every time they reduce the deficit, they reduce our paychecks, us little people's paychecks. And they convince people. And you see these well-meaning Democrats running around saying, it's the cost of civilized society, guys. We've got to tax. I'm willing to pay more for Medicare. I'm willing to pay more tax dollars for health care. Absolutely willing to pay more. Right? You see this constantly. And it's all part of that neoliberal mindset that has been going on since the 60s and 70s and has gone on steroids in the 80s and 90s. And Bill Clinton really destroyed us. He cut so close to the bone, took so much money out of the economy with his surplus. A government that creates its own money doesn't have a surplus, guys. All that means is that on the accounting ledger, they took more money out of your and my pocket than they actually spent back into the economy. That's what that means. And we've been paying the price for this ever since. And then you watch the Fed. Oh my God, you watch the Fed. They're like, we have no idea why there is no inflation. There's no inflation. We have no idea why we can't have inflation. This is a very strange phenomenon. After all, we've been controlling the money supply, and there's still no inflation. What's going on? What's going on? And you look across the pond over there at Japan. Japan doesn't have a petrodollar. Japan doesn't have a global empire army manning every friggin' station around the globe. Japan doesn't have all these things, but guess what? They have 250% debt to GDP ratio. And they have a very, very egalitarian society where all people are doing pretty well. This right here is MMT in a nutshell. Our government needs to be running an efficient economy. Our government needs to be striving for full employment. Our government needs to not be wasting time and resources, leaving unemployed people around with this NARU, which is non-accelerating rate of inflation. Okay, this is basically what they use to keep a certain segment of the population desperate and completely out of the game. And it all comes back to this: reduce the deficit. Reduce the deficit. Now I'm going to tell you something. I usually avoid naming names because there's a lot of people out there that really, really can't think for themselves. They're incompetent. And I don't mean that negatively. I guess it is negative, but I don't mean it to be mean. They're just politically incompetent, okay? They have to get their marching orders from Bernie Sanders, or they have to get their marching orders from Jill Stein, or they have to get their marching orders from the Democratic Party. Do you see what I mean? We're not talking about that they're bad people. They just are not very smart, or they're clueless, or they don't care. They don't take the time to learn. Whatever the reason, they're stuck and they're waiting for someone to guide them. They refuse to learn on their own because it might make them deviate from what the party wants them to do, or what St. Bernard or St. Jill or, Ronnie Reagan or whoever, right? So they can't think for themselves and they wait. Well, Bernie didn't say that. If Bernie didn't say that, Bernard didn't say that, then it must be wrong, right? I only go with what Bernard says. If Bernard didn't say it, it can't be right. I like Bernie, man. I'm even sporting Bernie right now, just so you all understand. I'm not here to take a dump on him. He's a politician. We are activists. We are human beings. We are citizens. Our interests, your and my interests, require that we have more of our paycheck, more of our ability to provide for our families. Too many people don't even have $500 in the bank. Do you understand that? Do you know what the deficit is? The deficit is our private savings. If you got laid off tomorrow, do you have enough money in the bank to set aside for 3 months to find another job? I was out of work for 18 months. I had just gotten my second master's degree, 2 master's degrees. I was certified out the wazoo. I was a CCNP, Cisco Certified Networking Professional, Cisco Certified Design Professional. I was a Cisco Sales Expert. I was a Project Management Professional. I had more certifications than you will ever imagine. I had a graduate certificate in Strategic Management of Technology and Innovation. I had a graduate degree, Master of Science in Technology Management. I had a Master of Business Administration. I have an undergrad certificate in IT Project Management, and I have a Bachelor of Science in Information Systems Management. I could not find a job for 18 months because of reducing the deficit. Reducing the deficit. You understand what I'm saying? Our bridges are falling apart. Why is that? Because we've reduced the deficit. Most bridges in America are falling apart right now. Most of them are rated a D. You're taking your life in your own hands when you cross these bridges. Most people are strapped. I'm talking about people that tried to go back to school for a second career that are older and have no chance of getting a job with the degree they just went out and got, and they're strapped with debt that cannot be discharged. Folks, this is the reducing the deficit. Now, why am I talking so much about reducing the deficit? Because the Democratic Party leadership has decided right now that as it attacks the Republican tax plan, which is a shitty tax plan, folks, make no mistake about it, it should be resisted at all costs. But it should be resisted because of the income inequality it creates. It should be resisted because it allows for pooling of money at the top that never makes it down to the bottom. And it gives a false positive when Wall Street looks like it's kicking ass. But we still aren't making ends meet. Too many of us don't have the money to pay for our student debt. Too many of us are months behind on our mortgage. Too many of us can't even find a place to live. And many of us are homeless and have no food or shelter or clothing. And most of us have terrifically shitty health care. So when you talk about a tax break for the Republican wealth and all the other things that they're screwing up by screwing grad students and stuff like that, and teachers can't write off supplies and so on and so forth. It's a very, very, very bad tax bill. And it should be resisted. And it should be defeated soundly. But it should not be reduced by the deficit. It should not be attacked by its blowing up the deficit. Folks, it is a trap. It is a trap. It is a trap. Somebody asked me why I never call out names, like as in like what politician and this, that, and the other. Folks, there are no good politicians right now that are telling the truth about deficits right now. Even Bernie Sanders is not telling you the truth about deficits. None of them are telling you the truth about deficits. Not one of them is telling you about general ledger work. One person's asset is another person's liability. So if the government is in deficit, then the private sector is in surplus. Remember, taxes are not repurposed. There is no Robin Hood running around grabbing tax dollars and handing them out. That's not how it works. It's not. You know that pie chart that everybody runs around showing you that shows the slice of military spending, shows a slice of entitlement, shows a slice of this and that and the other? You know that pie chart that everybody thinks they're showing you where your tax dollars are going? What they're showing you is a representation of if tax dollars actually covered these things, this is what it would go to. But they don't. And it's there to keep you trapped. It's a trap. Every single dollar that the U.S. government prints is a new dollar. It's a new dollar. Every single one. Every single one. And every single dollar it taxes and receives back in taxes is the death of a dollar. It's an unprinted dollar. It is the removal of that currency from circulation. And I'm not talking about the pieces of paper. That's really for you and I to go to an ATM machine. That's really for you and I to have cash in hand. We want cash. But that's not representative of most of what the dollar is. Most of what the dollar is keystrokes. It's just digital dollars. And you see that famous meme running around, that famous video of where did all the money go at the Pentagon? Where did all the money go here? Where did all the money go there? They lost all this money. Folks, keystrokes. 1 minute you keystroke a 0 in, the next minute you keystroke another 1 in. It is keystrokes. There is no hoard of cash sitting there that people are running around with wheelbarrows pushing it around. And the same thing with Social Security. So folks, a spreadsheet doth not make a problem here. All this stuff is a spreadsheet management, ledger accounting. It's not pieces of paper and gold moving from one side to the other. It's keystrokes. Up, hey, Steve, got to up that one up 10,000. Right on it, boss. That's it. There's no raiding Social Security. Social Security couldn't go broke if we wanted it to. There's no Ponzi scheme. Every dollar is a new dollar. I want you all to get a hold of this, because if you're waiting for Bernie Sanders to tell you this on his own, he's not going to do it. If you're waiting for Bernie to do this on his own, he's not going to. It's not because he probably doesn't want to. I don't think it's nefarious. I think it's because you look at his own followers. And I'm not joking. You look at his own followers, and they're talking about the Rothschilds. They're talking about the private Federal Reserve. They're watching Alex Jones for their economic discussions. I'm not joking. Something as simple as understanding what the deficit is beyond them. But damn it, they're experts on the Federal Reserve, aren't they? They know everything. Just ask them. They'll tell you. You don't know what you're talking about, Grumbine. The only thing, I love it, they got a good bumper sticker. The only thing federal about the Federal Reserve is the name. It's like Federal Express. You hear that? It's cute, right? It's quaint. They think it's edgy. It's like, dude, cool, man. But it's nothing sexy about it. I wish it was. It's not a good James Bond novel. It's the boringest shit in the world. But damn it. As long as they keep you stupid up here, as long as they keep you out of the know, you'll continue to believe that the federal government should be run like your household budget. And they'll keep us deaf, dumb, and stupid. They'll keep us begging for crumbs. They'll keep us hating each other. When we could be solving problems around the world, not militarily, but with love. and compassion and generosity. Instead of worrying about our borders, we could be worrying about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But no, they keep it scarce so that we can hate somebody and we can scapegoat somebody that doesn't look like us or have the right qualities about their religious beliefs or whatever. And that's how the elite keep us hating each other down here. That's why you don't see us talk a lot about identity politics. Not because people aren't, going at each other. It's because the root cause is up here. It's the reduce the deficit shit. It makes us all fighting at each other, angry, stressed out, worried, wondering where our next dollar is going to come from, worrying about can we make our payment on our electric bill in the middle of winter. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? And then when I get angry, because the lights have been on for me for years, right? This is why I do what I do. Because for the last forever, I've been thinking about this every single day. Reading, learning, teaching, reading, learning, teaching, reading, learning, teaching. And people say, oh, he's angry. Well, you're goddamn right I'm angry. Aren't you? Now that you know, aren't you angry? When you see people saying these things, the first shot when they don't know, you say, man, I understand. I used to be like that. I can appreciate why you don't understand. Let me tell you. But once they fire back with that sarcastic LOL, look at this idiot. He failed basic economics. Really? Really? That's when I get fucking flame out pissed. It's not because I want to be pissed. It's because when you're Dunning-Kruger stupid, when you're doubling down on ignorance, and you're telling people that are literally fighting to save lives that they don't know what they're talking about, when they absolutely do, down to the nth degree. When you tell them that they don't know what they're talking about, and then you get mad at the person that does know what they're talking about for being, oh, he's angry. Look, I'm human. But I'm fighting for my kids, and I'm fighting for you, and I'm fighting for the people I can't stand also. I'm not just fighting for the people I like, I'm fighting for even Republicans. They don't know it, but I am. You see, I'm fighting for everybody, just like you can fight for everybody. Once you understand what I just said, this whole thing, watch it a couple times. I promise you, you won't get burned by it. Once you understand this stuff, you understand the dividing line between Democrat and Republican is bullshit. Because they're both going to play the deficit reduction game. They're both going to do it. The Federal Reserve cannot figure out why we can't create any inflation, guys. I'm not joking. Think about it. I'm Steve Grumbine with Real Progressives, asking you to avoid the trap and correct those around you that spew this lethal nonsense. Don't let them stay stuck. Imagine saving them from certain death. Have a good day, everybody.